morning. You are so far away. You are safe from all of my inadvertent spitting. I couldn't spit on you if I tried. Congratulations. There are two achievements from my high school years that I rarely share with anyone. In my mind, I'm nerdy and awkward enough as it is. There's no need to go reinforcing people's perceptions. And I see Dr. Ruby Jones nodding as if he knows. He understands even better. However, Kathleen, my loving wife and self-appointed PR person, just loves to casually drop these lesser-known details of my past into conversations. The worst of the two is that I'm an Eagle Scout. Many years ago, thankfully in a place far, far away, I regularly wore ridiculously green short shorts with matching green and red socks pulled up to my knees. I knew how to tie umpteen different knots and even manufacture more rope if, God forbid, we ran out on a search and rescue mission or were camping in the desert. And I dreamed of rescuing blind old ladies as they attempted to cross streets with large sacks of groceries, pulling them back to safety just in the nick of time as careless drivers almost smashed into them. I also completed an Eagle project. I'm a classic overachiever, and while some aspiring Eagle Scouts install a park bench and call it a day, that idea never really occurred to me. My project was to provide, for the first time ever, the 40,000 residents of Rosenberg and Richmond with the option of recycling their Christmas trees. The beneficiary would be a sprawling homeless shelter with its many flower beds. Everything was going great until people started dropping off their trees in late December. Hundreds and hundreds of trees. Within a few days, this became a monster project. We even had to put up a sign to say, "No more trees." Then our workday arrived and we started running trees through the chipper, which had been donated by a local tree trimming company, along with a work crew to operate it. Within an hour, we realized that many people had left nails in their trunks from their tree stands. That day, we ruined the first of 3 chipper blades. Each time, ending work for that day and forcing me to reschedule for another time when the chipper could be repaired and brought back. It wasn't until late spring that finally all the trees had been recycled. At last, the homeless shelter had abundant fresh mulch for its flower beds, and truth be told, it looked 1,000 times better. Now, I wish that was the end of the story, but unfortunately, it's not. A few months later, the homeless shelter ran out of funding and closed its doors, and a few months after that, the land was sold. Within a year, all the buildings had been torn down and replaced with, somewhat ironically, huge piles of landscaping materials. This weekend, we celebrate Earth Day in this community. And like an annual checkup with a doctor, this seems like a right moment for us to take a closer look at the state of the planet and the depth of our commitment to its health. Beyond what we know and think, how are we actually acting, working to preserve life for this and future generations? Will the actions we pride ourselves on actually tip the scales toward a healthier ecosystem? If not, to what degree are we busying ourselves with tasks that salve our troubled consciences but have minimal impact? The truth is that, like my Eagle Scout project, many of us who care about the environment are overachievers with fabulous intentions. But ultimately, we must ask ourselves, what long-term difference are we making? One of the most important resources to inform and guide this annual checkup is Scripture. Our holy texts remind us time and again that God desires right relationships with God, with one another, with all of creation. God's people are warned repeatedly of the consequences of hard hearts and selfish behavior. Hear these words from the 4th chapter of Jeremiah, words that ring true even today. Disaster overtakes disaster. The whole land is laid waste. I looked on the earth, and lo, it was waste and void, and to the heavens, and they had no light. I looked on the mountains, and lo, they were quaking, and all the hills moved to and fro. I looked, and lo, there was no one at all, and all the birds of the air had fled. I looked, and lo, the fruitful land was a desert, and all its cities were laid in ruins before the Lord, before God's fierce anger. Theologian Ellen Davis notes that the writer uses the Hebrew words for "I have seen" 4 times, willing the people of his age to open their closed eyes and see what they do not want to see: chaos, destruction, brokenness. He describes disaster upon disaster, the very foundations of the earth coming loose, the birds fleeing, the absence of human life, and ultimately, the garden lands becoming wastelands. Our present-day environmental condition isn't much different. Unprecedented weather patterns and natural disasters, earthquakes and open sores on the land from our insatiable demand for cheap and instant energy, extinction and endangerment for growing numbers of birds and other species, rapid desertification of land on every inhabitable continent, and especially in the Saharan region of Africa. The author of Jeremiah isn't just speaking to people of his own time, he speaks to us too. To put it bluntly, our relationship with God's creation is broken. We no longer live in harmony with the cycle of life. We no longer respect the limits of nature. The Homo sapiens species has become a vicious parasite, crippling its host in millions of indirect, collective ways, every day coming closer to the vision we read in Jeremiah, a day when the prophet looks, and lo, there are no human beings anywhere. This Earth Day, let us pledge to restore our relationship with God and God's creation. Let us abide fully, not only in the remaining oases of rugged, preserved nature, but also in the midst of the destruction our species has caused. The wetlands of the Gulf Coast, the mountaintop removal sites of Appalachia, the smog and air pollution of our large urban areas. The health and well-being of future generations rests not only on token, feel-good actions like recycling household items and remembering our reusable shopping bags. It relies not on noble intentions and symbolic gestures of understanding, such as my Christmas tree recycling project or designing buildings with a few superficial elements of green construction. It will not be realized if we're concerned about maintaining competitive advantage at all costs and finding the cheapest and most convenient means to our ends. Rather, we must reorient our very existence, as if our relationship with and to God's creation is important, in truth, essential to our future. We must recycle, and we must use more natural local resources that replenish on their own. We must remember our reusable shopping bags, and we must shop less, much less, consume less, find contentment with less. We must install compact fluorescent bulbs, and we must insulate better, acclimate more, and design buildings more efficiently to use less energy. We must purchase fuel-efficient vehicles, and we must walk, bike, and use public transportation more. We must install low-flow toilets, and we must fight against irresponsible mining, fracking, and dumps that poison our fresh water. Please join me in a few minutes of silence, reflecting on the brokenness in our individual and collective relationship with God's creation, confessing our self-centeredness, our silence, our relative apathy in the face of human-made disaster, our lack of imagination. A Short Testament by Ann Porter. Whatever harm I may have done in all my life, in all your wide creation, if I cannot repair it, I beg you to repair it. And where there are lives I may have withered around me, or lives of strangers far or near that I've destroyed in blind complicity, and if I cannot find them or have no way to serve them, remember them. I beg you to remember them. When winter is over and all your unimaginable promises burst into song,